Witness, before the tribunal adjourned, you made a comment on a note of Captain Röhm on the document 2822 PS, which was a minute from General von Reichenau to the Supreme SA Command. My Lord, it's in the document book Y, the original document book. Now, you see what that document is, that von Reichenau is saying that the desire had been transmitted to him from the Defense Policy Bureau of the party to be also represented in the Reich's Defense Council. And he goes on to say, I want to submit for consideration that this representation be combined in personal union with the representation of the Supreme SA Command, and that possibly one suitable person be charged with both representations. Now look at these words to which you mentioned yesterday as suggesting that there was nothing military in the wishes of the SA. Are these the words? Follow and see if I've got them right. Anne Kröger, 9, mit Reichenau, am, then the figure 1611. Vereinbart, das Vertreter der, then OB, SAF, I'll repeat that, der OB, SAF, Kröger. And does that mean, no, that the two parts of the representation are not to be combined, agreed with Reichenau on the 16th of the 11th that representative of the Supreme SA leadership is Kröger. In other words, that Kröger was to represent the SA leadership on the Reich Defense Council. Isn't that what Röhm's written?
Kröger war der Chef des Ausbildungswesens und hat als solcher...
First of all, listen to answer my question. Isn't that what's there? That Kröger is to be the representative of the SA leadership on the Reich Defense Council?
Nach dieser Bemerkung, ja.
Well, now, that was the remark that you were trying to make out yesterday, showed that the SA were not connected with military matters. It shows that they were represented directly on the Reich Defense Council, doesn't it?
Ich habe gestern die Gründe angegeben, zu welchem Zweck, nämlich zur Räumung des linksrheinischen Gebiets für den gestern von mir angegebenen Fall. Eine Räumung von Männern der Bevölkerung, aber nichts Militärisches.
Now, my Lord, in the interests of time, I should ask the Tribunal's approval of the following course. I have a certain number of new documents which are of a public nature. I should propose to put them in as without referring to the witness unless there's any point that the Tribunal thinks should be put to him. Lord, and then when we come to documents with which the witness can help the Tribunal, I shall cross-examine on them. But, my Lord, I think there'd be some saving of time, and I hope the Tribunal would approve.
That was what the Tribunal meant.
Your Lordship pleases. Now, my Lord, if your Lordship would look at the document book 16B at page 53. Thank you so much. Here.
The Defense Council, of course, have these documents, have they not? Or will have them?
Certainly, my Lord. They'll be given to them as we go along. My Lord, have you not gone? Oh.
Herr Präsident, ich habe diese Dokumente nicht.
Well,
You're just going to be given them, I think.
Will be given to you as I read them. Lord, the document will be given to Defence Counsel as I read them.
Yes.
Give it.
Certainly. That's what I was asking.
Yes. Lord, this is document D951. I think it's my fault I didn't give the number. Lord, it becomes GB 607. My Lord, it's a letter. It begins with a letter of Röhm, who was then the Chief of Staff of the SA, and it encloses a letter from von Blomberg to Hitler. My Lord, it's the enclosure which is important. That's from Berlin on the 2nd of March 1934. To the Reich Chancellor, I feel it my duty to draw attention once more to the significance of the staff guards of the SA. According to the order of the Chief of Staff, every corps and division, Obergruppe and Gruppe, is to form an armed staff guard with a heavy machine gun company. This formation is at present taking place. According to the report of the 6th Military District Headquarters, the SA Brigade Führers are also said to be considering forming such a staff guard already and to be engaging SA men for 1 to 1.5 years service for this purpose. Selection and training have to take place with the aim of appearing in public. Numerically, this would amount to 6,000 to 8,000 SA men, permanently armed with rifles and machine guns, in the area of the 6th Military District Headquarters alone. A particularly awkward factor is that the creation of these staff guards relies on so-called SA auxiliary camps, Hilfswerklager, which are mostly situated in the big towns. Then I call the tribunal's special attention to the next sentence. Today I have received a report that in Ernst on the Main, that is in the neutral zone, the creation of such an armed staff guard is taking place. Such behavior renders all the Wehrmacht's care and that of the Kröger depot within the neutral zone, which are influenced by it, illusory. As the Chief of Staff is away from Berlin, I'm sending this report direct to the Chancellor, signed von Blomberg. Lordship will realize that is 2 years before the occupation of the neutral zone on the Rhine. Then, my Lord, if your Lordship would be good enough to turn over to page 129, which is document 4013 PS. Lord, that will become GB 608. Lord, that is a letter from the defendant Rosenberg to from the local editor's office in Berlin to the Munich editor's office, presumably of the Beobachter. The Munich editor's office shall forward immediately in a well-closed envelope the following communication to the Chief of Staff. The authorities have learned that Austrians in Berlin have informed Vienna. Lordship will note this is the 3rd of February 1934. Adolphus Putsch was in July 1934, that the SA plans to have the Austrian formations in Bavaria march into Austria round the 8th or 9th of February. Then a military dictatorship would be proclaimed. This morning I had an inquiry from very important English quarters whether it could be possible that behind the back of Hitler and Habicht, the Austrians in Germany could invade Austria. My informant added that so far the Austrian charges had been laid aside, but this information had come from a reliable source that they simply had to contact us. I'm afraid of a possible provocation by hired elements which, if announced to the world just at that time, could produce conflicts. I explained that the Führer does not follow a peace policy with Poland and at the same time start any military conflicts with Austria. I report this matter, and that if occasion requires, the Supreme SA Command take the necessary steps. Now, my Lord, the next is the Czechoslovakia, and if your Lordship turns to page 65 of the book, my Lord, that is document EC 3661. My Lord, that is a report that will become GB 609. Lord, it's a report on the 11th of October 1938 dealing with the position of the Sudeten Freikorps in September 1938. It's made by Lieutenant Colonel Kirchling, who was the special delegate of the OKW to the youth leader of the German Reich. My Lord, I can give your Lordship the passages very shortly. On the first page, your Lordship will see about 6 lines from the bottom. There were an estimated 10,000 to 15,000 men in the reception camps and villages along the active front. Your Lordship will turn to page 66, line 6. Well, Lord, line 2 says that the groups were formed into battalions and so on. Then line 6, supplies had been organized by the SA in conjunction with the NSV and went very smoothly from the beginning. A small amount of arms consisting of Austrian carbines been supplied by the Austrian SA. Then 4 lines further on, with magnificent camaraderie and unselfishness, the Supreme SA leadership had looked after the Freikorps materially. About 10 lines on, equipping and feeding remained in the care of the NSV and the SA. Lord, on page 67, the 4th line, here again the SA helped in part with available signals apparatus. 6 lines from that, the building up of the groups and staffs in the manner ordered was only possible owing to the effective support of the liaison officers provided to each group by the OKH. And then 4 lines on, in this the liaison officers were particularly well supported by the German SA leaders from the Reich, who had been put into the Freikorps battalions by the SA. Without their camaraderie and their readiness to do their duty, the Freikorps could not have carried out its task. The supreme leaders appointed by the Freikorps by the Supreme SA leadership also contributed essentially to the building up of the Freikorps and to its success. And then, my Lord, there's some, on the next pages, there's some discussion about the way the work went on and how the SA continued to help. And, my Lord, I think from there, your Lordship can turn on to page 71 to see what this Freikorps did under this SA guidance. Lord, the last paragraph is, the force carried out more than 200 minor undertakings in which they lost nearly 100 dead and more than 50 wounded, and captured more than 2,000 prisoners and a great deal of booty of all kinds, see Appendix 1, so that the task which the Führer had demanded as a foundation for his foreign political negotiations may be considered as having been completed. Now, my Lord, in Appendix 1, your Lordship will see a list of the prisoners, the casualties and the prisoners, and the guns and ammunition and equipment that were captured. And of course the tribunal will remember that all this happened in a time of peace, which all the defendants have been so anxious to point out to us, that no war ever started, that is before Munich. Now, my Lord, your Lordship will remember that I put to the witness, I asked the witness yesterday whether the training of the SA in the middle of the war in 41 differed from the training that it was given in peace. And, my Lord, I only want to give your Lordships the different documents in which the training is found. I'm not going to take them in detail, but I'll indicate what they contain in a moment. My Lord, the first is a memorandum on training on the dated the 23rd of February 1934. My Lord, that is 1849 PS, and your Lordship will find it in the page 82 of the document book. Lord, that becomes GB 610. My Lord, on pages 89 to 104 of the book, your Lordships will find the training course. Now, my Lord, the next document in order of date is 2354 PS, which is United States Exhibit 430, and is in the old SA document book. That is the organization book for 1938, which includes the training of the SA, including the military training, throwing hand grenades and so on. Then, my Lord, the next document, Lord, what I propose to do was to summarize the points of similarity at the end, and then if your Lordships, I'm sure, will check and see if my summary is right. The next document is D925, which will become GB 611, which your Lordships will find on page 32 of document book 16B. Lord, that's a list of the handbook, of the contents of the handbook of the SA. And, my Lord, it must be after 1937, because there's a reference to the People's Gas Mask of 1937 on page 36. I haven't got the exact date. But, my Lord, if your Lordships would merely like to note the sections, they are 8, 9, and 10 under the letter E. 8 is musketry, 9 is training in terrain, and E is the training for the attack. Lord, then there is a lecture of Lutzer, which was given in 1938, and that is document 3050 PS, which is a large bundle of extracts from the SA Man. But, my Lord, this is in a special bundle which we have had translated of certain articles, and it's number K, 3050K. My Lord, it's, as I say, it's a lecture of Lutzer, of whom this witness has talked so much, given on the 14th of May, 1938. Then, my Lord, the next is a new document, a document that Major Barrington put in yesterday. It's D918, which is page 1 of document book 16B. That is the training directives for 1939. Lord, it goes on from page 1 to page 21. And, my Lord, there is, apart from the training, which is dealt with at length, which, as I say, I'll summarize, there's one point on page... My Lord, there's one point on page 21, which I'd be grateful if the tribunal would note, because this is apart from training, but I don't want to go back to the document. My Lord, on page 21, your Lordships will see under the letter H, aids to the preparation and carrying out of the training, and under the number 4, the SA man. My Lord, there's just a point on that. Now, my Lord, the last document of this series is on page 108 of document book 16B. Yes. My Lord, and that is 3993 PS, which will become 612. And it's a letter from Lutzer to the defendant Rosenberg, please, dated the 30th of January 1939, please accept my thanks for your congratulations incidental to the Führer's decree which assigns all pre-military and post-military training to the SA. Now, my Lord, the common factors of these documents are, as it can be seen from the documents, first of all, dealing with musketry, the general handling of arms, and all the concomitant matters. Secondly, the use of terrain, including...
Sir David, the tribunal would like you to put that last document that you've been dealing with, 3993 PS, yes, to the witness.
Well, I'll certainly do that. To give the witness a copy. Witness, have you seen that document from Lutzer to Rosenberg on the 30th of January 1939?
Jawohl, habe ich hier.
And is that correct, that the Führer had decreed shortly before that the pre-military and post-military training should be assigned to the SA?
Am 19. Januar 1939 hat dies der Führer verfügt. Praktisch ist dieser Erlass nicht mehr zur Anwendung gekommen.
Well, I suppose you carried out the training which is contained in these directives from 1934 to 1939, did you not?
Ich muss zu den hier vorgeworfenen Angelegenheiten der SA eingehender Stellung nehmen, zumal das Recht der Rechtfertigung von dem Hauptvertreter der Anklage, Herrn Jackson, den Organisationen ausdrücklich zugebilligt worden ist. Ich will also zu den einzelnen hier aufgeführten
Well, I don't think you need worry about
Stellung nehmen.
Just wait a
Ich
moment.
bin noch nicht fertig.
Wait a...
Ich war noch nicht fertig.
Witness. Don't argue. Please answer the question.
Do you
argumentiere.
dispute that these directives that I have mentioned all contain training in musketry, training in handling of arms, training in the use of terrain, that is, the use of ground, camouflage, reports, methods of attack, reconnaissance, and everyone except the first, all of them, training in the use of hand grenades, and generally training in attack, in battle, in dealing with an attack on an attack by armored troops, attacks by aeroplane. In fact, that they all contain the first stages of military training which every soldier has had to go through before he is qualified to be a soldier. And witness, before you answer, you may assume that 90% of the male population of this court have gone through military training and they know it from a practical point of view. Are you saying that these training directives do not contain the ordinary initial stages of military training?
Erstens leugne ich nicht und zweitens ist das eine Ausbildung, die beim Militär betrieben wird, aber nicht bei der SA. Zum Beispiel Handgranaten werfen, Ausbildung mit Flugzeugen, Ausbildung an Waffen. Das haben wir nicht betrieben. Diese Fragen sind im Übrigen nicht mit Ja oder Nein zu beantworten, sondern dazu muss ich eingehend Stellung nehmen, wenn ich wahrheitsgemäß und erschöpfend Auskunft geben soll.
Well, witness, what I want to know is this, before you, then the tribunal will no doubt let you give your explanation. But are you telling the tribunal that these training directives were issued one after the other for 5 years, from 1934 to 1939, and that training was not carried into effect? Now tell me, you can answer that yes or no. Was that training carried into effect?
Wir haben eine Ausbildung betrieben zur körperlichen Ertüchtigung mit Sport und Wehrsport nach bestimmten Richtlinien. Diese Richtlinie muss ich sehen, um sagen zu können, ob wir nach diesen Richtlinien gearbeitet haben oder nicht.
Well, I don't propose to put them in detail. If Dr. Röhm wants to, he can do it.
I think what the tribunal wished to know, with reference to the document that they asked you to put to the witness, was how the witness explained his answer yesterday, which I took down in these words. Lutzer didn't write about military training. That was the answer you gave yesterday, with reference to a document 3215 PS. Well, now we have put before us a document from Lutzer to the defendant Rosenberg, which thanks Rosenberg for his congratulations, incidental to the Führer's decree, which assigns all pre-military and post-military training to the SA. Well, why did you say yesterday that Lutzer didn't write with reference to military training?
Euer Lordschaft, gestern war die Rede von einem Zeitungsaufsatz über militärische Ausbildung. Dieser Zeitungsaufsatz betrifft die von der SA betriebene Arbeit. Und das ist eine reine Wehrerziehungsarbeit. Auch in dem Erlass des Führers, wenn ich mich recht erinnere, heißt es, die vor- und nachmilitärische Wehrerziehung Es kann auch Ausbildung heißen, das will ich nicht mit Sicherheit sagen. Aber gemeint ist die Wehrerziehung und später in den Verhandlungen über die Durchführung dieses Erlasses, die sich bis zu Kriegsbeginn hinzogen, wurde dieser Begriff vor- und nachmilitärische Ausbildung oder Wehrerziehung umgeändert in außermilitärische Ausbildung oder Erziehung. Das heißt also, alles, was das Militär macht, soll die SA nicht tun, sondern alles Vorbereitende, den Körper und den Geist vorbereiten, sodass die Männer, die durch die Schule der SA gegangen sind, körperlich taugliche, leistungsfähige Männer werden und geistig wehrbereite Menschen sind. Das war der Zweck und der Sinn des Erlasses und der tiefe Sinn des sogenannten SA-Wehrabzeichens. Ein Waffendienst war bei dieser Ausbildung nicht vorgesehen.
Are you saying that between the Führer's decree of January and the beginning of the war that there was no pre-military training done? When did you start it again?
Es sollte anfangen mit der Entlassung des 1939 dienenden Jahrgangs beim Militär. Der ist im Oktober oder November. Da sollte der Erlass in Kraft treten. Der Kriegsbeginn hat das Inkrafttreten des Erlasses verhindert. Das wurde in einem Befehl des Generalobersten von Brauchitsch in den ersten Tagen des November sowie durch ein Schreiben des Reichsleiters Bormann an den Stabschef besonders zum Ausdruck gebracht. Da hieß es nämlich:
Witness, I just want to get it clear. When do you say it was to come into operation? Did you say in October? When was it due to start? When was this pre-military training due to start? When in 1939? When?
Diese Ausbildung sollte beginnen nach Kriegsbeginn im November oder Oktober. Daran erinnere ich mich nicht mehr genau. Bis dahin wurden vorbereitende Arbeiten getroffen. Wie man das durchführen
Witness,
könne.
just let's clear. Are you telling the tribunal that it didn't start?
Ich sage dem Hohen Gericht, dass die Durchführung dieses Erlasses im Herbst 1939 seinen Anfang nehmen sollte.
Well now, then why did you put such an extraordinary untruth in your report of June 1941, which your lordships will find on page 118? The pre-military training practiced by the SA since the outbreak of war on a voluntary basis in the SA defense groups has been already explained in detail in reports 1 and 2. That's your reports, first reports of the war, regarding the activity of the SA in the war. And then you go on to explain the report, including planned target practice, instruction and practice in handling and cleaning rifles, as well as shooting in the range and on the field, and further the throwing of hand grenades under assumed combat conditions. Why did you put such an enormous untruth into your report, if what you're telling the tribunal is true today, that you never started it at all?
Ich habe weder in dem Bericht die Unwahrheit noch jetzt die Unwahrheit gesagt. Ich darf fragen, der Bericht bezieht sich auf den Krieg, auf die Zeit des Krieges. Das habe ich nicht recht verstanden. Auf Kriegszeit. Jawohl. Da habe ich gestern schon, Euer Lordschaft, zum Ausdruck gebracht, dass die SA mit Kriegsbeginn alles getan hat, um die deutsche Wehrkraft zu stärken. Das war unsere Pflicht als Patrioten. Und da haben wir den Schwerpunkt in unserer Ausbildung auf den Wehrsport gelegt, nicht mehr auf die Leichtathletik und die sonstigen Leibesübungen, sondern vornehmlich auf den Wehrsport. Aber auch dieser Wehrsport war kein Waffendienst. Wenn von Gewehrreinigen da gesprochen ist, dann haben wir das Gewehrreinigen den Männern an unseren Kleinkalibergewehren beigebracht.
Well, my lord, the report is in. It includes radio training, and the pre-military training includes all men over 18 years of age. My lord, your lordships have the documents and can consider them it. My lord, the next group of documents which I'd ask your lordships to consider relate to the fact that it was stated before the commission that the SA Man, which is part of the evidence of the prosecution, was an unofficial publication with a circulation of 200,000. Well, that was said before the commission at pages 212 and 213. Now, my lord, if your lordship would be good enough to look at pages 111, first at page 111 of document book 16B, your lordships will find document number 4010 PS, which will become GB 613. Oh, yeah. Yes, it's page 117, I'm sorry. Page 117 in the German book.
Of ours, is it?
My lord, it's page 111 of your lordships. My lord, that's a letter from the editor of the SA Man to the defendant Rosenberg. And your lordships will see that there is on the letter, organ of supreme leadership, SA of the NSDAP, on the letter heading. Then it's sent to Rosenberg, and it asks him for an article to commemorate their 5 years of independent publication and 8 years of publication as a supplement to the Völkischer Beobachter. Now, my lord, in the middle of the second paragraph, your lordship will find the sentence, a subscribers list of 500,000 clearly shows the importance of the SA. That was on the 13th of August 1936. And my lord, on page...
I think you said the importance of the SA. It's the importance of the SA Man.
SA Man, I beg your lordship's pardon, it's my slip. The importance of the SA Man. My lord,
Did you the first 2 lines?
No, my lord, in a few weeks, der SA Man, combat publication and official organ of the supreme SA leadership, will look back upon an existence of respectively 8 and 5 years. My lord, I'm obliged. Then, my lord, on page 110, page 116 of the German document book, there's a letter from the defendant Rosenberg's staff. Reichsleiter Rosenberg confirms with his best thanks receipt of your letter and of the 13th August and sends you enclosed the preface asked for. Then, my lord, if your lordship would turn back another page to 109, which is page 115 of the German document book. Lord, this will become GB 614. Lord, this is a letter from the editor again to the defendant Rosenberg. And, my lord, your lordship will see on the letter heading this time, the press referent of the Supreme Command of the SA, in main office, the editor of Der SA Man. Then, my lord, this is 21st April 1938. They've now got to 10 years. They're again asking defendant Rosenberg for an article on the subject of the ideology and combat paper, Weltanschauung und Kampfblatt, or something similar to it. Then the next paragraph, I do hope that you will be agreeable to our wish, and I am convinced that especially a contribution from your pen will be greeted with particular enthusiasm by our 750,000 subscribers. And your Lordship will remember the evidence that this witness gave, that a few months after that, in 1939, the total membership of the SA was 1,500,000. So the SA men went to 1 in every 2. My Lord, I have already referred the tribunal to the recommendation of the Chief of Staff Lutzer in the training directive D918 of the SA men. And, my Lord, as I told your Lordship, the articles appear in the document 3050 PS, which is United States Exhibit 414. There's a long list of articles that are contained in that document of a military nature, anti-Semitic nature, anti-church nature, all of which my friend Colonel Story put into the tribunal. I don't intend to go over again. Now, my Lord, the next document which I'd ask your Lordship to look at is one of the cases of the perversion of the course of justice in the interests of the SA. My Lord, it's your Lord, document D923, which your Lordship will find on page 22 of the document book 16B. Well, that becomes GB 615. Lord, it's a long document, but I'll take it very quickly, and if there are any points, my Lord, your Lordship will, I'll be willing, I'm very willing to deal in detail. Oh, my Lord, the German page is 22 also. My Lord, that is a report, as it appears in the top of page 22. There are five sections which are recapitulated in the 6th. The first is a report of the public prosecution, Provincial Court, Nuremberg, Fürth, to the Bavarian State Ministry of Justice, dated the 21st of August 1933, regarding the beating to death of one Pflaumer by the SA. Then, my Lord, there's the post-mortem report. There's a report from the public prosecution that the police were refusing to give evidence in the above cases. It might endanger the well-being of the Reich. For a report from the Court of Appeal public prosecutor that the police directorate refused permission the police officials to break official secrecy, and that is in number 5, rather naively in the last sentence, the police directorate refused permission to police officials to break official secrecy for the trial. They also need both accused, that is the people who are accused of beating them to death, to guarantee the security of the party rally. Then, my Lord, the next, document 6, is a report from the defendant Frank to the Minister of State for the Interior. And, my Lord, it shows that the man Pflaumer was beaten up at a guardhouse in August 1933, the 29-year-old married mechanic. And he was then brought to the main police station by the SA and died there. And, my Lord, on page 23, at the top, your Lordship will see the provincial court doctor also reported that, according to his findings, Pflaumer was beaten to death in a most cruel and torturing way with blunt objects. And 2 lines on, that after dealing with the result of the bastinado, the conclusion had to be drawn that the perpetrators did not cause the injuries to the ill-treated man in self-defense. And then apparently they say there's some question of doubt, but your Lordship will see that on the evidence there was no doubt that these people were concerned. Then, my Lord, on the paragraph, next paragraph, next two paragraphs deal with political pressure against proceedings. And, my Lord, there then comes in a somewhat similar case in section 2, which I don't want to complicate the matter. It's a separate case of 3 Jews beaten up by the SS. Now, my Lord, on page 24, the defendant Frank says that the events in section 3, the events described under 1 and 2, give me great cause for great apprehension. And he goes on to say that people are still indulging in brutality, that members of the SA, in the middle of the next paragraph, still allow themselves to indulge in the inadmissible ill treatment of opponents. And then at the beginning of the paragraph after that, the events show further that unfortunately attempts are still being made to interfere with the legal course of justice. And then the defendant draws the line of between the line of date of the amnesty. And then at the beginning of the next paragraph, he says, especially in the case of trauma, I consider it an urgent necessity in the interests of safeguarding the authority of the state and the good name of justice and the police to avoid even the slightest appearance that the police are shielding the crime. And then he suggests the last words of that page, the misgivings of the chief of the political department of the Nuremberg Fort Police Directorate can, however, be taken into consideration by the exclusion of the public during the trial. The carrying out of a trial can hardly be prevented by the refusal to allow testimony, for in view of the confession of the accused Korn and Stark to date, together with the results of the judicial autopsy, the trial will have to be instituted against them and carried out under any circumstances. And then he deals with another case. Now, that goes on, and you'll see that it finishes by requesting the Prime Minister to bring the matter up for discussion at the next meeting of the Council of Ministers and to invite Röhm and Himmler. Then that's done, and Lord, there is then a significant inquiry in page 26 from the Bormann asking how the matter is going on. And, my Lord, then on page 27, page 27 of the German version too, document 13, it's one of the insets on page 27. The Public Prosecution Provincial Court, Nuremberg, report to Court of Appeal, Public Prosecutor Nuremberg, that the preliminary investigation ended on the 19th of March 1934. The Police Directorate, Nuremberg Fort, intend to apply to for the quashing of the criminal proceedings. And then, my Lord, there is in document 14, that matter is discussed, and, my Lord, that's on pages 27 and 28, and then at the bottom of page 28 in the German version, you'll find a section, Certificate of Opinion. My Lord, that says that on mature consideration, I assent to the suggestion of the Police Directorate. Firstly, it should be considered whether the proceedings could not be brought to an end by the release of the accused. According to the result of the preliminary investigation alone, Korn ought to be accused in any case, according to what is mentioned above, while only the accused Stark could be released from criminal proceedings. but furthermore an investigation or an extension of the investigation against the persons who took part in this matter, accomplices, possible instigators and helpers, and finally also those who favoured the culprits, would, according to such and such a paragraph, be occasioned. But if the proceedings were to be carried out in this manner, it would be unavoidable, even if the public is to be excluded from the actual trial, that the public would get to know about the events. But this would seriously harm and shake the reputation of the SA, the party, the police, and even the National Socialist State. If your Lordship would look at the bottom of page 29, the last paragraph.
Before you
I'm sorry, my Lord.
Deal with that, perhaps you ought to read the last paragraph but one on page 27, beginning at the second sentence in that paragraph. Page 27,
Yes.
the penultimate paragraph.
Lord, is that the one beginning therefore?
Yes.
Lordship pleases.
Second sentence, as the police forces.
As the police forces available were far from sufficient, the SA Sturm for special use, which was stationed at Nuremberg in the old Samariter Wache at the Hauptplatz number 4, was appointed to assist the police in these tasks. In this guardhouse, the necessary confrontations and questionings of arrested communists took place. The leader of this Sturm, SA unit, was then Sturmbannführer, SA Major Eugen Korn, 25 years old, unmarried, commercial employee at Nuremberg. His deputy was Hans Stark, and so on, a corporal. Lord, I'm very much obliged. Lord, I was taking your Lordship to the last paragraph on page 29 of the German text. Lastly, it may also be pointed out that this deed was committed relatively shortly after the coming into force of the amnesty decree of 2nd August. If it had been committed before the 26th of July, 1933, that is only 3 weeks earlier, it would have been amnestied like a number of other political excesses, as the deed did not originate in an ignoble motive, but rather served the achievement of an exceedingly patriotic aim and the advance of the National Socialist State. The quashing of the proceedings, also in view of the above-named relation of the time of the deed to the above-named amnesty, does not seem incompatible with the orderly administration of criminal justice. For all these reasons, it is suggested, in accordance with the petition of the Police Directorate, that the proceedings on account of the bodily injuries resulting in the death of the mechanic from as well as on account of the actions of criminal participation and acts of favouring immediately connected with this, should be quashed. And, my Lord, in due course, that is forwarded by the defendant Frank in the next document on page 30, and von Epp on the top of page 31, as Reich Governor says, I hereby quash the criminal proceedings, and that is announced, that is sent by Frank to the Court of Appeal Public Prosecutor. Lord, it's interesting, Lord, I should have referred your Lordship to it in view of what we've heard about isolated acts unconnected with the SA leadership, that this man Korn was, the Sturmbannführer Korn was on the staff of the Supreme SA leadership. My Lord, my Lord, I don't intend to take the other ones as, I hope to be able to do it even shorter, but there are two others which show this same perversion of justice, and therefore I submit are important. Lord, the next is D936, which the Lordships will find on pages 51 and 52. That will be GB 616. My Lord, this is D936. Did I give the number?
Yes.
I gave the number. My Lord, that is connected with the 9 members of the SA who were charged with beating up the editor of the newspaper, the Law Bavarian Peasant. My Lord, that was a Dr. Schlegel, and my Lord, the Law Bavarian Peasant, I think, was a Bavarian People's Party, a sort of Catholic Party's paper. And my Lord, your Lordship will see that the proceedings are held to fall within the amnesty, but Lord, it's interesting again to see the declared motive and the connection with the leadership. Lord, if your Lordship would look at the second paragraph of the reasons for the decision of the Amtsgerichtsrat, it says, "There is no doubt, therefore, that the deeds were committed for political reasons. They were committed also to ensure the success of the National Socialist state. It may be that the destruction of the furniture was intended to serve the purpose of a house search, in which previously imbibed alcohol may have played a harmful part in the manner of carrying out that decision. It may be that by the destruction of the furniture, certainly, however, by the ill treatment, it was intended to restrain Dr. Schlegel from further political activity. No other motive for the deeds need be found." I ask your Lordship to note, the Supreme SA leadership have also examined these questions. In their letter of 14/9/33, they announced that the SA men in question were bound to see, and did see, in the possibility of Dr. Schlegel forcing his way into the National Socialist movement, a danger for the movement and for the nation itself. Nor were the deeds committed for the purpose of personal profit or other low motives. The Supreme SA leadership state on this point, the deed and intention of the SA men were only aimed at the well-being of the National Socialist movement. The political reason and the purity of the intention is thus beyond a doubt. Now, my Lord, I ask your Lordship again to note the SA, that is the Supreme SA leadership. My Lord, the only other one, I hope I can take it quite quickly, is, my Lord, your Lordship will find in document book 16A, that's the smaller document book, page 9. My Lord, your Lordship may remember that my learned friend, Major Barrington, mentioned the question of the punishment of these members of the SA. I think, my Lord, they run to some 30 or so, that had been engaged in cruelties in the concentration camp of Hohenstein. And my Lord, this is the report dealing with their punishment. And my Lord, your Lordship will note, and this is, in my submission, interesting, that it's dated the 5th of June, 1935. And my Lord, it concerns the penal proceedings against the merchant and SA leader, Obersturmbannführer Jeneken, my lord, and 22 companions. I'm afraid I said 30, but it's 23. In inflicting bodily injury and duty in the protective custody camp of Hohenstein in Saxony. And this is a letter from Dr. Juettner to the defendant Hess. That is, it's a top-level letter from the Minister of Justice to the Deputy of the Führer. Lord, it's 784 PS, becomes GB 617. Then the Dr. Juettner, first of all, sets out the sentences that were asked for by the prosecutor. Then, my lord, he sets out the sentences which were inflicted by the Supreme Court at Dresden. Well, I ought to have said this is page 9 of the English document. I think page 9 to 15 of the German too. Lord, turning over to page 10, which is pages 10 and 11 of the German document, your Lordship will see that the Minister of Justice writes, after the proposal of the sentence, however, still before the announcement of the verdict, the chairman of the Criminal Division number 12, that's the judge, received the following letter from the Reich Governor, the Reichsstatthalter of Saxony.
Verzeihen, Herr Präsident, das Schriftstück, das mir zugeleitet worden ist, hat weder eine Seite 9 noch eine Seite 10, sondern nur eine Seite 7 höchstens. Ich bin also nicht in der Lage, diesem Vortrag zu folgen.
I see, it's only paged here. Oh yes, Lord, I see the paging's different on Dr. Burns. Where's after it? That's right. Martin Lushton, yes, that's what I'm reading here. So sorry. Right, that letter there. Now, this is the letter from the Reich Governor. As I was informed, it is proposed to impose a punishment of 3.5 years of penal servitude upon the accused Standartenführer Jeneken. Without wanting to interfere in the proceedings or intending to influence you as judge in any way before the verdict is announced, I would nevertheless like to once more call your attention to the fact that the circumstances, as they had been brought about by the Revolution of 1933, and as they without doubt were still taking effect up to the beginning of 1934, cannot be overlooked when pronouncing sentence. Further point appears to me to be worth taking into consideration, namely the fact that one cannot accuse Jeneken of having a low character, and that above all, in Hohenstein, the scum of humanity had to be attended to. In consideration of this fact, I should like to leave it to you to consider whether the lapses call for such a severe degree of punishment, your Lordships will note the next words, or whether a pardon could not be considered. As Gauleiter of the NSDAP, I consider it as my duty to call attention again to the unusual circumstances. Now, my Lord, the Dr. Juettner, the Minister of Justice, goes on, and, my Lord, this, your Lordships may well think, is the most extraordinary and sinister part of it. Moreover, the information has come to hand that the two magistrates who functioned as judges in the principal trial, namely Regierungsamtmann Helbig and the merchant Pessler, had been expelled from the NSDAP after the announcement of the verdict. I do not know by whom this expulsion was ordered. Finally, it has been put to the assistant prosecutor, Staatsanwalt Dr. Walter, who is a stormtrooper, that after the pronouncing of the verdict on his Obersturmbannführer, that he should resign from the SA. And then you may think that the Minister of Justice goes on with some extremely pertinent observations as to the impossibility of carrying on justice if this goes on. He says in the middle of that paragraph, the end of page 12, in the German version, that kind of procedure against lay judges after the verdict had been pronounced would naturally and necessarily arouse the feeling that when they are functioning as judges, they are responsible to a certain office for their work. Hereby, the judicial impartiality, which is the foundation of every orderly administration of criminal law, becomes null and void. Then he deals with the lay judge, and Your Lordship will see at the end of the paragraph, he comes to the understandable conclusion, I would find myself obliged to consider the question whether in the face of such a state of affairs, public prosecutors and judges could still be functionaries of the party or members of the SA at all. Now, my Lord, Your Lordship will see at the bottom of page 11 of the English book, page 3 of the document, and page 13 of the German version, that there is a letter to the Chief of Staff of the SA of the NSDAP with a copy of the following accusation enclosed. Now, that would be Lutzer at that time, because Röhm had been murdered before that date. And, my Lord, the same points are put to the Chief of Staff of the NSDAP, and, my Lord, the matter then goes up to Hitler. My Lord, Your Lordship will find the report that contains Hitler's decision on the pages 13, 14, and 15 of the English version. Page 16, I think it starts. 16 to 33 of the German version. And if Dr. Böhm, I hope Dr. Böhm will be able to find it. My Lord, Your Lordship will see that there is, first of all, the crime. Oh, my Lord, that is 785 PS. I'm sorry, my Lord, I thought it was the same document. It's a different document, which ought, well, it ought to have a... Oh, yes, that's all right. My Lord, the Lordship will see in the first paragraph the description of the crime. The mistreatment of inmates which has led to the sentencing of the accused were not carried out for any political purpose, to obtain a confession, to punish disciplinary infractions, etc., or in respect to previously suffered wrongs inflicted by communists, but were merely malicious torture or expressions of sadistic brutality. Then a few cases of mistreatment occurred where the enemies of the state were concerned. The end of that paragraph, that the defendants not only attempted to wring confessions from the inmates, but that they acted in sheer lust for torture. They acted in sheer lust for torture. This is a document apparently coming from the Reich Chancellery, so that when we get, Your Lordship sees the criticism that is made in that quarter. But then, my Lord, of course, it goes on to say at the end of the next paragraph about them being motivated neither by political purposes or by personal revenge. And then that is shown. But, there, my Lord, at the top of page 14, it is stated, if nevertheless, as I suggest subsequently, a further reduction of sentence based upon new evidence of some of the defendants, I can only justify my action because I believe that, according to circumstances, the defendants in one or other of the cases of mistreatment may have partly acted out of revolutionary motives. I'll repeat that, may have partly acted out of revolutionary motives. And then it gives some examples, and, my Lord, at the foot of the page there is the appendix with Hitler's decision. Upon application of the Reich Minister of Justice, which apparently is the preceding, I hereby grant in the case against Rudolf Jänichen and others for mistreatment of persons committed to protective custody in Hohenstein concentration camp, the following mitigation of sentence is enumerated in the columns. And then roughly, my Lord, the sentence is reduced by either a third or a half in each case. Yes. Lord, I'd just like to correct an exhibit number. The first document I'm sorry, I'd forgotten, United States Exhibit 732, and the second document, 785 PS, will be GB 617.
No. That's it too. That's 733. That's 733. The other 732.
All right, Lord, I'm again sorry, it's my mistake. It's US 733 is the second document. I'm so sorry.
Both in order.
I thought it was that. I thought.
Perhaps we better break off the...
No. Witness, will you tell the tribunal what the SA Sturm for special use, which was stationed in Nuremberg in the old Samariter Wache at the Hauptplatz number 4, what tasks it carried out in assisting the police?
SA-Stürme und Sturmbanner zur besonderen Verwendung hatten wir an verschiedenen Orten. Meines Wissens auch in Nürnberg. Allgemeine Aufgabe dieser Einheiten war, sich zur Verfügung zu stellen im Katastrophenfalle. Ferner für polizeiliche Zwecke, wenn sie von der Polizei angefordert und von dieser als Hilfspolizisten für die Dauer des Einsatzes verpflichtet wurden. Auch im Feuerlöschdienst waren sie tätig. Im Kriege, im Luftschutzdienst, zum Beispiel in Hamburg, in Westfalen. Das waren so im Allgemeinen die Aufgaben der Sturmbande ZBV, die sich aus Männern zusammensetzen, die beruflich zu solchen Einsätzen in der Lage waren, zeitlich und beruflich.
The present example is that these men, under Korn, who was on the staff of the Supreme SA leadership, beat this communist to death by using the bastinado on his feet. Was that one of the special uses which this Sturm indulged in when they were doing their work? Was that the sort of thing, beating up communists, was that one of the special tasks? Was that a typical special task of this Sturm, to beat up communists in August 1933?
Nein, niemals war das die Aufgabe. Und wenn Korn das getan hat, dann muss er der gerechten Strafe zugeführt werden.
You must have known Korn, didn't you? He was on the staff of the Supreme SA leadership.
Ich habe Korn gekannt aus dem Jahre 34 etwa. Habe ich ihn
And you
gekannt.
went on working with Korn for years, didn't you?
Er war noch länger im Personalamt tätig. Von dieser Untat, die eben hier berichtet wird, war mir nichts bekannt bis heute.
You knew nothing of it today when you were Deputy Chief of Staff of the SA. Are you really telling the tribunal you knew nothing about it, that a man from the staff of the Supreme Leadership had been engaged in this foul and brutal murder in Nuremberg and you heard nothing about it? Is that your story?
Es scheint dem Herrn Vertreter der Anklage entgangen zu sein, dass ich erst ab 39 Stellvertreter des Stabschefs war. Bis dahin war ich im Führungsamt Abteilungschef und dann Chef des Führungsamts.
I'm not forgetting what your first words in evidence, that you said that you could give an account of the SA from 1933 onwards and deal with all relevant points. However, if that's your answer, I'll leave it. I'll now take up another of your suggestions. Look at document 1721 PS. My Lord, that's the document that's in the original document book, my Lord, dealing with the events of the November 1938. Your Lordship, remember the witness suggested yesterday that it must be that the document was not authentic. Now, witness, I'm not going to argue with you, but I want you to point out certain things in the documents and then pass it to the tribunal. You are not disputing that you wrote the document dated the 29th November 1938, of which a copy is the first one on the bundle. That is the document dealing with the handing over of Jews' property taken by the SA to the Gestapo. As I understood you yesterday, you're not disputing that you did write that, the document of which that's a copy. Is that so?
Habe ich gestern schon gesagt, dass ich dieses Dokument anerkenne.
Now, would you look at the bottom corner of that document, and you'll find on it the stamp of the SA group Kurplatz. Do you see that?
Sehe ich.
And do you see in the stamp the letters H, W, and G?
Ja, so ähnlich kann das lauten.
Now, at the bottom, beside the stamp, you'll see a sign ZDA, which means, don't let's waste time over it, zu den Akten, put it on the file. Do you see that? Do you see the contraction, ZDA?
Ja, die sehe ich.
Now, would you look at the document which you are saying is wrong, is not authentic, and would you find on that the same stamp of the SA group Kurplatz and the same letters H, W, and G? See that?
Ja, das
And do you see, I think it's on the top of the second document, that's the document of 11, the contraction SZDA in the same handwriting as on the first document. see that? The top of the document is ZVA.
Ah ja, ich habe es gesehen.
Yeah. Now there's just one other, two other. On that document, which is the report to the SA group of the Electropalatinate Koopvaarts, from the dealing with the a number of Standarten. Would you look under Standarte 145? Now, do you see that it says synagogue at Bensheim, and synagogue at Lorsch, synagogue at Heppenheim, synagogue at Birkenau? Now, look at the next. Do you see that the next is the prayer house at Alsbach? Gebetshaus in Alsbach, isn't it?
Welche Seite, wenn ich fragen darf?
It's in the list. It's the document of 11th November, and it's a list. It gives a series of Standarten, and the first is 115, and the next is 145. Do you see that? Sergeant Major,
Yeah.
Oh, you got it. Well,
This here. Ja?
you see that after 4 synagogues, the next one, I think it is Gebetshaus in Alsbach. Do you see that?
Jawohl. Ja.
Now I want you to turn over the page to the telephone, the note for the files of the telephone call by the Führer of Brigade 50, Darmstadt, Brigade Führer Lücke. Do you see that? You perhaps should find again, it's there.
Ja.
Now, if you look down to the same group, you'll see that it says the synagogue in Bensheim destroyed by fire, the synagogue in Lorsch near Bensheim destroyed by fire, synagogue in Heppenheim blown up, synagogues in Röhm and Birkenau destroyed. Now, does it say the prayer hall? That the word is die Bethalle in Alsbach, destroyed.
Ja, die Bethalle in Alsbach.
The
steht
same
hier.
distinction is drawn between a synagogue and a prayer hall, which is either called a Gebetshaus or a Bethalle. Now, the other pages contain reports of different Standarten. My Lord, I'm not going to, of course, to argue the point, but I wanted to bring out these points from the witness as he had challenged the document. Now, witness, I want you to just to help me on another point. You know that after this, these incidents, on the 9th and 10th of November 1938, 14 SA men were found guilty of killing Jews. Did you know that? Men of various ranks in the SA were found guilty of killing Jews. Do you accept that? The document is before the tribunal of the party court containing the decisions. I don't want to waste time. If you'll admit one thing I put to you, do you admit that 14 SA men were found guilty by the party court after the 9th and 10th of November of killing Jews?
Ich habe dieses Dokument hier erfahren in der Gefangenschaft, in dem die 14 SA-Leute genannt sind, die Juden erschossen oder erschlagen haben sollen.
Now, you have said, not once but many times, that whenever SA men were guilty of excesses, they were punished. Do you know that all the SA men who had killed Jews were let off? The only people, the SA men who were sent for punishment, were those who had committed rape or theft. 3 of them who had committed rape and theft. Do you know that all these 14 SA officers were let off for this murder?
Ich bin überzeugt, dass sie von der SA bestraft worden sind. Die Bestrafung für die hier genannten Mordtaten war Sache der ordentlichen Gerichte. Ob sie dort bestraft worden sind, weiß ich nicht.
Well, but let me tell you, because the document has been put before the tribunal, the regular court let them off because they fell within the line of party comrades who, motivated by their decent nationalist socialist attitude and initiative, had overshot the mark. That's why the party court let them off, according to their own document. Now, are you saying that the party or the SA punished people for ill-treating Jews when these 14 murderers of Jewish women and children and men were let off because they were motivated by the decent National Socialist spirit? You saying they were punished?
Ich bitte mir, das Dokument zu zeigen. Ich halte das für ausgeschlossen, dass die oberste SA-Führung diese Stellungnahme eingenommen hat.
It's the Supreme Court of the party. Higher than the SA leadership. Supreme Court of the party, composed of Gauleiters.
Das oberste Parteigericht ist nicht das SA-Gericht. Das SA-Gericht...
No, but it's the Supreme Court of National Socialism. And that's what they did. They recommended that these 14 SA murderers should be let off. Now, how does that square with your suggestion that murder was frowned on?
Ich bitte doch verstehen zu wollen, dass das oberste Parteigericht eine Reichsinstitution der Partei war, während die SA ihr SA-Gericht hatte. Nur auf dieses SA-Gericht hatte die SA-Führung und der Stabschef vor allen Dingen als oberster SA-Richter Einfluss, nicht auf das oberste Parteigericht.
Did you know, witness, that the Supreme Party Court had let off these 14 murderers in the SA after 1938?
Das habe ich erst hier erfahren in der Gefangenschaft aus diesem Dokument.
So the Deputy Chief of Staff didn't know that 14 officers of his own organization had committed cruel and bloody murder. That's what you tell this tribunal. Well, I'll ask you on another point.
Der Stellvertreter des Stabschefs, der war überzeugt und ist auch heute noch überzeugt, dass alle Ausschreitungen 9., 8., 10. November, soweit sie von SA-Angehörigen begangen wurden und bekannt wurden, nicht nur von der SA, sondern auch von ordentlichen Gerichten bestraft wurden. Und ich weiß aus den Worten des Stabschefs Lutze, dass er in aller Schärfe darauf gedrückt hat, dass ihm die eine oder andere Untat nicht bekannt wurde, das will ich nicht bestreiten.
Now, there's one other point I want to put to you. You have represented Chief of Staff Röhm as being a peace-loving, church-going man. Is that the impression you want this tribunal to have of the character of Chief of Staff Röhm? That he was a peace-loving, church-going man?
eine Frage, deren tiefer Sinn schwer zu verstehen ist. Ich habe behauptet, Stabschef Röhm gehörte der Kirche an. Er nahm also nicht Stellung gegen die Kirche. Er war auch friedlich eingestellt, denn es ist erwiesen, und ich bin selbst Zeuge, wie er nicht nur seinen SA-Führern, sondern auch Vertretern der ausländischen Mächte gegenüber immer und immer wieder die von ihm angestrebten freund-nachbarlichen Beziehungen betont hat.
All right, now I just want you to look at an extract of Hitler's speech on the 13th of July 1934, a fortnight after the putsch. Page, yes. My Lord, I've passed to the witness Schultes' Geschichtskalender for 1934. I put in an extract in the time. But at page 182, this is what Hitler stated to the Reichstag. But at this point, I must establish the fact, for the present and for posterity, that these men no longer possessed any right to invoke National Socialism as an ideology. That is, Röhm and his friends. Their lives had become as bad as those of the people we overcame and replaced in 1933. The behavior of these men made it impossible for me to invite them to my house or to enter the Chief of Staff's house in Berlin, even once. What would have become of Germany had these people been victorious, it is difficult to imagine. Now, witness, you know perfectly well, and I ask you to tell the tribunal, why was it that Hitler wouldn't enter Röhm's house even once?
Das lag im Ermessen von Hitler, aber nicht in meinem. Darüber kann ich keine Auskunft geben. Das ist mir unbekannt.
You know perfectly well it was because he was the most notorious homosexualist in Germany. Isn't that right?
Dass er in der Hinsicht krankhaft veranlagt ist, ist mir nicht unbekannt. Aber ob das der Grund für Hitler war, weiß ich nicht.
Oh, there's this. My Lord, I'm sorry, there's one duty that I've forgotten. Your Lordship asked me to put the affidavit of Dr. Herkner to this witness. My Lord, he was the Prime Minister of Bavaria. Your Lordship remembered Dr. Böhm referred to it, and Your Lordship suggested that I should put it in cross-examination. Have you... Have the tribunal got... I think the tribunal have copies, my Lord. My Lord, that is document D930. So they have an exhibit. Lord, GB617.
Sir David, I don't remember saying that you should put it to him.
Well,
and I think what I said was that if you did put it to him, that Dr. Böhm would then have an opportunity in re-examination of examining upon it, and that if you didn't put it to him, it not being already in evidence, it wouldn't be in evidence.
My Lord, my Lord, I've no desire to put it. I wasn't sure if Your Lordship wanted me to do it. This is one of the group of affidavits which I mentioned to the tribunal that I would give to the defense counsel at once as they are general affidavits from ministers and other prominent people in Germany, which are in general rebuttal of the affidavits put in by the defense. And, my Lord, I was quite content, in fact, that was, I suggested and the tribunal approved, that they should be read when we are dealing with the documents, after the defense documents, but that I should give it to the defense so that they would have an opportunity of dealing with it in advance. My Lord, that's the position, and I'm very content to adhere to it.
If you want to make use of it, I think perhaps it should be offered in evidence, so as to make it strictly in evidence.
Well, my Lord, I'm quite content to do that. They were going to be offered in evidence as affidavits. My Lord, it's only a matter of procedure. I don't mind which, of course, the tribunal will decide. The defense are putting in about 300,000 affidavits, which are being summarized in a number of general affidavits. My Lord, I suggested the other day, and it was approved, that we should put in, at the same time, we should have put in rebuttal these few affidavits that we have.
Yes, very well. Do it then. Put it in, offer it in evidence now. Offer it in evidence now.
Well, my Lord, I'll do that.
Is there any other rebuttal besides these affidavits?
My Lord, it's this group. I think there is one addition to it, my Lord, but that's all the rebuttal as far as I know.
Yeah. You're not going to offer to apply to call any additional witnesses?
No, my Lord, certainly I'll verify from my colleagues,
yes,
as far as I know whether they're not, but I haven't, I'll verify that at once, my Lord. Lord, none of the prosecution are going to submit any oral evidence in rebuttal.
Very well.
Well, Lord, this is the affidavit of Dr. Wilhelm Högner, the Bavarian Prime Minister, and it gives his address. And, my Lord, it deals, if you see in the second paragraph, he says that he mentions the two pamphlets, part 1 and 2, submitted to me, Hitler and Kahr, the Bavarian would-be Napoleons of 1923, a scandal of justice exposed in the Committee of Inquiry in the Bavarian Provincial Diet, were written by me. At that time, I was assistant reporter of the Committee of Inquiry of the Bavarian Provincial Diet on the Hitler Putsch of 1933. All the facts mentioned in these pamphlets originate from court documents which I worked personally and from which I made extracts. That also applies especially to the military orders and instructions, partly quoted literally in the pamphlets. And then, my Lord, he gives an account of the illegal and violent activities of the SA from 1921 to 1933. And, my Lord, that is the long paragraph. Then he goes on to say, dealing with 1933 and 1934, the SA did not change their behavior later on either. Especially after 1930, it distinguished itself in the conflicts with its political opponents by its violence and ruthlessness. After coming into power of the National Socialists, the SA broke into the houses of political opponents as a heavily armed horde, ill-treated and arrested them. It is known to me that the SA also played an evil part in the persecutions of the Jews in April 1933. The same was the case in the occupation of the trade union buildings on the 2nd of May 1933. Already before that, the chairman of the Munich trade unions, Gustav Schiffer, had actually been attacked by members of the SA in the trade union building, and so seriously ill-treated that he had to spend a long time in hospital. Then, Lord, that's continued with some additional information about the SA SS in the next paragraph, and then, my Lord, in the penultimate paragraph, the pre-penultimate paragraph, he says, before my departure from Germany, the former communist deputies Dressel and Schlafer were murdered in the concentration camp of Dachau, probably in May 1933. Whether by the SS or the SA, I do not remember for certain. I knew the incident very well because I complained about it to the Reich Minister of Justice, Dr. Juettner, in Berlin. And then he accounts an SS incident of murdering somebody else. And then he says the gross excesses of the SA and SS in the service of the NSDAP were accomplished so publicly that the whole population knew of them. Everyone who entered these organizations as a member knew about such excesses.
Does he say when he left Germany?
Lord, I don't think he does. Lord,
Rather material, isn't it?
Lord, I'll get that point discovered. Lord, your Lordship is of course right. We ought to have had that stated. As to whether he did leave Germany, Lord, I'll get a supplementary.
Perhaps one ought to conclude from the document that it only relates to 1933.
Well, my Lord, he does say after the coming into power of the National Socialists, the SA did so and so. Lord, that is at any rate after the beginning, and he goes up to May 1933 to the trade unions. But, my Lord, your Lordship is quite right. There is no specific date given after 1933. I'll verify that point, Lord.